All right, let's keep talking. If the market is an ocean, then your startup is a bunch of people in a rowboat. And what you're doing in that rowboat is you're sailing around this big ocean trying to find a destination that's going to be worth going to before you run out of food and water. Or in the context of a startup, before you run out of money and time. A startup is usually dedicated to finding product market fit before its resources run out. It may have cash, it may have human beings involved, it may have psychological investment and mental effort, but all those things will be exhausted if you don't find product market fit fast enough. So see it as your job to navigate your rowboat across that ocean towards product market fit as quickly as you can. And if you find something that's wrong, change direction and find something else quick, because you've only got as many resources as you've got, and those have got to be focused on nothing more than getting you to your destination. So think about it from that perspective and you'll be in pretty good shape. Now, that comes to the question of resources. How do you get resources for your startup? How do you get those that financing that's going to help you extend your runway? There are 4 ways. This is a little bit facetious, but you'll see my point. The first way to get funding for your startup or to finance your venture is to be rich. And do it yourself. You don't have to ask anybody's permission. You can waste money. You can do things in lots of different directions, and it doesn't matter. So the first way to do it is to be rich. The second way to finance your venture is to have a rich uncle. Somebody who's going to invest in you just because you're you, because they think that you're awesome, not because of anything that you do or will do or have done. Now, the third way you can finance your venture is to have made someone else rich in the past. Because if you've done that successfully, other people will say, hey, if you can do it, if you've done it before, then I trust that you can do it again. And again, it kind of doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it, because you've proven that you can figure it out before. Those are 3 pretty good ways to get your venture financed. Now, for the vast majority of us who don't fit into that particular category, there's the fourth way. And the fourth way, in many ways, trumps all 3 of those other ways put together. That is to have evidence that the market and your product fit. If you have evidence of product market fit, then you can trump most of these other ways to get resources for your venture. And I add the term in there, Sniff-Test-Proof, because it's not absolutely critical that you have incontrovertible 100% ironclad guarantee that you have product market fit. What you need to have is the beginnings of it, evidence, glimmers, whatever that is, to a degree that somebody looking at it from the outside won't call BS on you right away. And that's why we call it Sniff-Test-Proof. Because there's a sniff test that anybody from the outside is going to look at here. Are you really finding product market fit, or are you just telling me a story? If you can persuade those folks that you are actually telling them a BS-proof story, then you can get funding for your venture. But that's the key. How are you going to do it? How do you do it sustainably and affordably? And that's what we're going to talk about next. So let's talk about what Sniff-Test-Proof really means. It's about ensuring that people will look at your story and say, oh, these people actually did find product market fit. The first element of Sniff-Test-Proof is that you've got commitments from actual paying customers to buy your product. Or in some business models, you have actual users using your product that can be monetizable later. Facebook, for example, is a good example of this. They went out and found a way to meet a social need that many hadn't realized was out there. And then they found a way to monetize those users with advertising later. Now, what you need to be able to prove is that you're getting commitments from these paying customers, not I'd like to, or survey results, or gee, these folks sound like they're good people, I might as well do it. But factual commitments saying, yeah, I'll take that. I think that'll solve my need, which infers 2 things. 1, that you've successfully understood what their need is. And 2, that you've defined your solution in such a way that it meets their need. So those 2 things are critical in order to find the evidence from actual paying users or customers. It's important that those customers come from the public marketplace. They have to be strangers. Your family and friends don't count. They might be doing you a favor. They might be becoming customers of your venture because they owe you something, or they owe your brother money, or they're doing you a solid for something you've done in the past. That doesn't count. So if too many of your customers come from that particular segment, you fire off the BS sensors from anybody who's going to be looking at you. And finally, that has to be customers that you've obtained as a result of something you did. Almost by definition, the goal of product market fit is that you found a way to address a market. If you don't know what you did in order to get a customer, they randomly came across you and decided that they found you, to be able to meet their needs, it doesn't count. So you have to be able to prove that it's something that you did. Now, it could be as simple as calling them on the phone and telling them what you're doing, and they say, hell yeah, I'll take that. Or it could be more complicated, like a marketing strategy or a social media strategy or an event strategy, whatever that is. But it's the ability to do something that obtains those customers that has to be part of Sniff-Test-Proof product market fit. And finally, once your product is in the market, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you can actually support the need of those customers and that it's not just a promise that you've successfully identified. So once your product is in the market, you need to be able to meet the 40% rule. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the key is you'll notice that a lot of these things on Sniff-Test-Proof product market fit don't require you to have a product in market yet. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but that is actually the cheapest way to get yourself close to product market fit, is to not build a product until you have successfully been able to obtain customers who know and want what you have to offer, even if you haven't built it yet. We'll talk more about that later. Let's talk about the 40% rule. Once your product is built and in the market, people are using it, the 40% rule says that 40% of the customers who use your product would be very disappointed if they don't have access to your product or consider your particular product or service a must-have. 40%. Now, you can do better than that. That's even greater. But if you're delivering a product that only meets, the needs of 5% of your customer base, you haven't achieved this yet. You haven't found enough of a problem and met it to a sufficient enough degree that you can satisfy that market. So ask this question of your existing customers once you've got a product in market. Would you be very disappointed if you no longer had access to this product or service? And if the answer legitimately is yes, then you've achieved the 40% rule if your numbers are high enough. All right, so there's your definition of product market fit and the goal that you're shooting for. But how do you get there? I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story here in a second about how one of my companies in the past went through this process almost accidentally and achieved product market fit.